Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are back. We took a little break for Thanksgiving, but today is November 30th. Today is Sunday. We just wrapped up Rivalry weekend. It was a great week 14, but welcome back to First and Short, your first place to get short bits of college football news and analysis. Today, I am joined by my host, Aaron. I am Mashfik. Before we get started, Aaron, we're over 200 now. We're over 200 subscribers, so we're aiming for that 300 by the end of the year. So please, if you get a chance, just go ahead and press subscribe real quick. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, those as well. Really appreciate you guys watching and listening to us this whole season. We're near, well, technically from a timelines perspective, we're kind of near the middle, but the regular season is pretty much done now. We have conference championships coming up, so we will talk about that. We'll do an early preview of that, but we're going to talk about week 14, how that went, and we're going to talk about our boy Lane Kiffin. But Aaron, you and I, we did Thanksgiving together. What are you thankful for this season? What happened this season that you're happy about?
Sure. The thing that I'm happy about and thankful for this season is just the dominance and the level of elitism that I've seen in the SEC. I hate to show my bias, but I am an SEC fan, and I just love how so many teams that usually aren't at the top of conference contention or even playoff contention are here.
That's fair. Yeah,
got new teams.
Right. Yeah. I would say I am thankful for the coaching drama. It's we called it at the beginning of the season. I'm glad we didn't look stupid, and I'm thankful. I mean, a lot of teams are going through rough times, rough seas with that, but it's caused a lot of interest in the sport outside of like what's being played on the field. So that's just been interesting to watch. So on that vein, Lane Kiffin last night, or really this whole weekend, Marty Smith, he's been stuck in Oxford, Mississippi, trying to figure out what Lane Kiffin's going to do. I imagine it came down to, was Ole Miss going to make it to the SEC game? Alabama ended up winning yesterday. Georgia ended up winning over the weekend, so Ole Miss is out of that. And so the current report is we don't know. But the expectation is, I mean, we're recording this at almost 11 a.m. Eastern. They were supposed to have a team meeting here at 10. So right now the expectation is to hire, Kiffin, LSU, and, Ole Miss will not have him as the head coach for the postseason, which they are expected to make. But now I'm kind of wondering if the CFP is going to include them with something like this going on. Any additional thoughts, Aaron, on that whole Lane Kiffin situation?
Sure, yeah. So that would be absurd if they don't make the playoffs. But also, we got a report from CBS, maybe 15, 20 minutes ago that Lane Kiffin, he reportedly wants to take his entire offensive staff immediately to LSU.
Wow.
So that team meeting, it's been postponed, and it looks like things are going to get pretty ugly before they get resolved.
Jeez, yeah. If that's if that's common knowledge, then no way the CFP is letting them. That sucks for the players that actually earned it and aren't on Lane Kiffin's good side to like not get to go to LSU. Okay, well, we'll keep an eye on that. Probably by the time this episode is done and on YouTube, we might have something on that one.
Yep.
Let's look at the results from the weekend. Aaron, I beat you again this time. You got 7 out of 10. I got 8 out of 10 from our picks from last week. You usually beat me, so it's fine. You missed on Pitt, Michigan, and Texas A&M. I missed on Auburn and Texas A&M. So 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 there. Let's start with the Iron Bowl. That was the last game that I watched last night. That was very entertaining television to watch. Alabama, they survive another road Iron Bowl. They secured another trip to Atlanta in December. Last time they were here, at Auburn, it was the gravedigger call to Isaiah Vaughn that secured the win for them. Last night, different Isaiah, but same end result. Isaiah Horton, he completed a hat trick with 3 catches for the whole. He had 3 catches for the whole night, but all 3 of them were touchdowns. I think he only had 35 yards or something like that. But during a night where the pass game was looking a little iffy, announcers were talking about something wrong with Ty Simpson's back. They had him connected to some machine or whatever else. His passing ability looked a little iffy, but he was able to hit Horton, when it mattered and when it was needed. That last one, like on that 4th and 2, Aaron, you and I were talking about it while watching it at my place, but we were talking about it, should they go for it or what would you do?
Mhm.
What would you do in that position? 4th and 2 on the Auburn, on the Auburn, like what, 3, 4, 5, something like that.
Yeah.
What do you do in that situation?
Yeah, tie ball game, that is a super gutsy call, wanting to, go for the touchdown to get the 7-point lead instead of 3. Me personally, it's why I'm not a coach, why I'm not out there. I would have been a little bit more conservative and kicked the field goal, but it worked out for Kalen DeBoer and his team anyway, you know?
Yeah, exactly. This is why we're not head coaches. I guess they would have won the game anyway.
Mhm.
But if it hadn't had worked, this is what I thought about afterwards. It's like if it didn't work, Auburn is starting from their own. I'm looking at the highlight now, from their own 6. So it's
Yeah.
like it's not the worst thing in the world, especially Auburn's offense was a little sputtering at times. So let's actually take a look at it. I want to hear your thoughts. I
Mhm.
want to hear your thoughts as to what they were able to do well on that one,
Yep.
and we'll go from there. So we have this is the 4th and 2 play. It does end up with Isaiah Horton. I think he's number 1 outside on the left here. So, Aaron, I ask you this all the time. What are you seeing from both sides? Yeah, give me your thoughts.
Goal line, red zone defense. A lot of times you're going to see, cover 0 from defenses. So that means everybody's got a man. It's 1-on-1. Um, Alabama, I think before this play, to give you context behind what they were doing the whole game, right? They were giving you a lot of motion to offset this type of formation, or you're seeing, Ty Simpson give some misdirection and then run. Like he uses his legs a lot this game to get first downs and make things happen. So I mean, honestly, I give credit to Auburn's defense because they were able to stay in the game with all of that going on. Hindsight's 2020, but usually when I see a bunch formation at the goal line, I'm thinking teams are going to switch. So if you run the play, um, Horton's able to get open because you see that little cross in between traffic and all that mesh, and
Mm-hmm.
he's right there where you pause it at. He has leverage to be able to beat whoever's guarding him 1-on-1 if somebody is guarding him 1-on-1. Looks like they kind of converge into a zone a little bit, and boom, he's open right there. Ty squeezes it into the zone, or if it is zone, and they score. He gets his 3rd touchdown of the game.
Here's another look at it.
Mm-hmm. Again,
So,
crossing routes. Looks like somebody is tagged to him 1-on-1, but he beats him in the crossing him in traffic. That's the thing. Receivers know where they're going. DBs don't know where they're going. So
mm-hmm.
it's so tough playing, defensive back like that.
It was a tighter window than I initially thought. But shout out to
Hmm.
Ty Simpson for able to find that zone, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Um,
I
yeah,
think it was,
because I don't.
safety over the top, trying to cover ground, but
Is there
he
anything Auburn
couldn't.
could have done better here?
Um, it is tough to say. If anything, maybe they prepare for the crossing routes and have somebody dedicated to the inside route, somebody dedicated to the outside route, instead of sticking with your man, switching and following.
Mm,
But like I said, hindsight 2020, they saw so many different types of plays out of these type of formations all night.
mm.
You
Gotcha.
know.
Got to commit to something. So, during a portion of the game that Auburn was finding, they were finding their footing on offense later in the second half, with Ashton Daniels as quarterback. Gwinnett legend, by the way. Alabama was able to milk, almost 8 minutes off the clock with that drive that ended with the 4th and 2. Really masterful play calling there by Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb.
Hmm.
Time of possession wise, Alabama for the whole game, Alabama had the ball 9 more minutes than Auburn, which in a close game like that, that's one of the differences that you needed to secure that win on the road. Aaron, in your opinion, what did Alabama do well to win this game?
Yeah, first things first, they made Ashton Daniels uncomfortable as possible, right? Auburn had nothing going right for them on offense up until, the middle of the second quarter. And, even then it felt like, it was pulling teeth for them to try to get positive yards on offense. Announcers, I think they even mentioned early in the game that Auburn had more penalty yards than offensive yards at some point early in the game. So
Yeah.
pretty ugly starting out. Offensively, the passing was not great for Alabama, right? But Jam Miller and Daniel Hill, they were starting to look like some real Alabama running backs. Shout outs to that offensive line for giving them the opportunity. They ended the game with I think 4.2 yards per carry. So, they had more rush yards than pass yards. I'm not sure if we've seen that at all this year from this Alabama team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was, wrong on my pick. I mentioned that earlier, but clearly it
Mhm.
was a lot closer than people expected. If Auburn had a couple of bounce balls go the right way, maybe Auburn could have secured the upset. The stats said that they only had 2 turnovers, 1 interception, 1 fumble, but they had like 4 fumbles on that last drive. So that easily could have been a lot higher. And they could have definitely been a lot cleaner with the ball. Auburn defense was great, in my opinion. They dialed up a lot of pressure on Ty Simpson. They got 4 sacks, which matched a season high for how much Alabama has allowed. They've allowed 4 sacks a few times throughout the season, but I
Yeah.
think they've won each and every one of those. I don't even think Oklahoma was able to get 4. But that offense was pretty poor during most parts of the game, like you just mentioned,
Mhm.
Aaron. Surprised we didn't see Cam Coleman more. I don't know if he was hurt. He was limping on that last one, but he did fumble the ball, at the end. So that could be a reason why we didn't see him. I don't know what his ball security was looking like at practice this week. But in any case, Alabama, they win another Iron Bowl. They earned a berth to the SEC championship against Georgia next week. And Auburn ends their season not bowl eligible and will probably look to make DJ Durkin the next head coach at Auburn.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that we didn't really mention, we didn't see much of Ryan Williams at all.
Yeah,
It was
true.
very interesting. Yeah.
Both teams
Um,
saving their star running wide receivers. I don't know.
yeah. I don't know.
Where's Cam Coleman? Where's Cam Coleman transferring to next season?
Uh, that hey, is that on the table? Maybe he likes DJ Durkin so much that he doesn't leave. We'll see. We'll see. Yep. Moving on to our next game, clean old fashioned hate. Uh, Georgia, they defeated Georgia Tech this weekend, 16-9. Mash, you and I were both at this game this weekend, in a new site for the first time. This is the first time that this game has ever not been held on a college campus. How did it feel being in Mercedes-Benz Stadium for this matchup?
So first of all, it's not cleaned old fashioned hate anymore. Now it's the Invesco QQQ Gridiron Classic. All right,
Yep,
classic
yep.
name there. But any case, we were both at the game. We were sitting in different places, but man, it was cold outside. So I'm kind of glad it was inside. I'm not gonna lie to you. I wish it wasn't like a neutral game or like at a
Hmm.
neutral site, even though it was technically a home game for Georgia Tech. Um, but I'll just say I was glad to be in the warm. But it did seem like there were a lot of Georgia folks there. From where we were sitting, it seemed like it was more red and black. But I was surprised to see the stadium was full. Like it
Um,
was a fun environment. I had fun. I went with my friend. Shout out to Steven. He's a Georgia Tech guy. And we were enjoying our time with the people around us. But yeah, I had a good time. Do I want it at Mercedes Benz every year? Absolutely not. But for maybe like a one time thing or here and there, whatever.
yeah. Yep. No, that's fair. That's fair. So yeah, let's talk about what we noticed overall for this game. Um, it was pretty anticlimactic compared to what we saw last year in the 8 overtime thriller. Don't get me wrong, it was still a close game, but there wasn't much offense in this game. I mean, Georgia had 260 yards total offensive production, while Tech only had 250. Very uncharacteristic for both teams, in my opinion. Mash, what was the difference?
Yeah, for Tech, I think they faced a very tough defense. That is, a tough defense in the SEC, which is much different than what they faced much bigger, faster than what they've been used to seeing. Haynes King was pressured a lot, which Georgia hasn't all season. They haven't shown a lot
Mhm.
to be able to pressure the quarterback. I mean, and Georgia did a good job of not letting him get comfortable in the run or the pass game. He did. He was the leading rusher with 39 yards for Georgia Tech. I think that speaks volumes of how well this Georgia defense did against the run in general. Their four-quarter performance is really what led them to not give up a single touchdown. Haynes King tried to throw a couple bombs. Ellis Robinson came up with a pick one time. The other one was like a Hail Mary, which obviously was batted down. So yeah, they only gave up, 3 field goals throughout the whole game. For for Georgia, I'm not sure what Mike Bobo's game plan was this week, what him and Kirby was cooking up, but ironically, to me, it seemed like to mimic what Tech normally wants to do. It consisted of a lot of misdirection and QB runs. We saw Gunnar Stockton run the ball 15 times, and many of those runs were misdirection with motion or option reads. Nate Frazier had a great day. I mean, it seemed like every single carry just went to him. 16 carries, 108 yards. The run game was definitely effective for Georgia over the weekend. Georgia was able to score when they needed to, but the amount of points that they put up against a defense who is terrible, who is notoriously known for bad performances, it could put question marks if they want to make a national title run. I will say this, however, even though this was not the normal production we see from Georgia, it felt like they were in control the whole time. They ran the ball plenty, and they trusted their defense when it was time to punt.
Yeah, yeah. For Georgia Tech, this pretty much puts a sore nail into their hopes of any type of playoff chances, if there were any, and it solidifies UGA's chances, pretty much clinches, well, regardless of this game, they clinched a conference championship berth because of Texas A&M loss on Friday night. Um, we'll see how well, this offense executes against, probable college football playoff competition. They got Alabama next week, so they got to gear up for, one of the best, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So perfect. Let's talk about Texas A&M and their loss.
Mm-hmm.
I think we both picked Texas A&M in that one.
Mm-hmm.
Texas. So Texas defeats number 4 Texas A&M 27-17. They made a very strong case as to be the to get included in the CFP as the only 3-loss 9-3 team when it comes down to it. Arch Manning, he's getting better and better. He showed it this week for sure. He took down the last standing undefeated SEC team. Arch made some key plays with his arms and his legs this week, as he had one touchdown on the ground and one through the air. He really looked comfortable again. He looked like what the media was kind of like billing him out to be, making the right passes and running out of the pocket when he needed to. Honestly, a lot of maybe if he had confidence issues or whatever else, I felt like a lot of it stemmed from his receivers dropping the ball. But didn't seem to happen too much this game against Texas A&M. But running back Contravian Wisner, he had 19 carries for 155 yards, explosive runs, crazy explosive runs that helped keep the A&M defense honest and helped create a balanced attack for Texas, which led to the win. Texas A&M was in a position to go to the SEC championship, get a first round bye, et cetera, et cetera. They were one win away from that. But looking into their schedule, right? They played 8 conference games. 5 of them were the bottom 5 of the SEC when it comes to conference win-loss records.
Mm-hmm.
I saw an interesting tweet yesterday. They played more teams this season that fired their head coach than teams that will make a bowl game. So they played 4 teams that fired their head coach. They only played 3 that will make a bowl game. So maybe slightly overrated, maybe slightly inflated expectations based on their level of competition that they faced. What do you think went? That aside, what do you think went wrong for Texas A&M in this game?
Yeah. immediately we saw Marcel Reed. He was very rattled. He had an injury scare in the first quarter that made him miss some minutes. And then when he came back in, he really didn't look like himself after that. He ended the day with only 180 passing yards and 2 interceptions, no passing touchdowns. So, wow. Stopped him, made him ineffective. He did have 71 rushing yards, but was the leading rusher for the team. So he almost had to do it by himself when he had his spurts of, elitism. As far as, receiving Casey Concepcion, he was very limited with only 5 receptions and 57 yards. I hate to sound rudimentary here, but Texas did exactly what every team intends to do when they play this team. They they shut down their stars, right? Marcel Reed and his favorite target, they were locked down. And so Texas A&M, they really had a hard time getting anything going.
Yeah. For Texas, it's very key that you find your footing and you start heating up at the right time. Is Texas the team that's finding their footing at the perfect time? They're in the playoff discussion now, and we're pretty sure they'll be in the AP top 12, maybe on the outer ends, the outer reaches of the bracket. So we'll see how that unfolds after, I guess, the conference championship weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, moving on to the game. You got number 1 Ohio State. They defeated Michigan 27-9. This Buckeye team, Ryan Day and Brutus, they finally did it. They left their
MVP.
mark. Wink, wink. Yeah, on Michigan for the first time since 2019. Coach Day, he was really humble in his press conference. And there was no planting the flag in the big house as Michigan players guarded the logo. But here's a quick rundown of how the game went in our eyes. It's fair to say, nerves were high, and for the most part, both defenses came to play. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
First quarter, it was only limited to field goals, so pretty steady game going. However, after that, it's when we saw Ohio State turn into the consistent number 1 team in the nation we normally see. I really don't think it matters who this team is playing. One-on-one with Jeremiah Smith or Carnell Tate is a pretty obvious mismatch, right? They showed it as they each caught, bombs to, widen the gap in this lead for touchdowns. Julian Sand, he had a great game. He threw for 3 touchdowns and 233 yards. But there is one person that I really want to highlight on this offensive performance, and that would have to be the freshman, Bo Jackson.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ohio State, they did to Michigan what is usually done to them in this game. They bullied the defense by running the ball on the ground and keeping it on the ground for most of the game. Bo Jackson, he had 117 yards on 23 carries. They really played bully ball in the second half, all the way up until the final second. Ryan Day, he didn't say it, but I felt like there was definitely a message, a nonverbal message he was trying to send to the Michigan team. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
my biggest question mark for Ohio State, 2 big question marks. One, how do they fare against a team with a pulse? They did pretty good. My
mhm,
second biggest question mark, more importantly, was how do you run the ball? Because I don't think that was just a question mark. I just hadn't seen it. Hadn't seen it being done well. Bo
mhm.
Jackson. Well, they were facing a Michigan team that was like top 8 in rushing yards allowed.
Yeah.
So it was a big question mark, in terms of like your own production versus and going up against a team that can shut it down. And they did a great job. Shout out to Bo Jackson for that. I think they answered that question emphatically. And that's something that'll definitely be useful moving forward.
Agreed. So yeah, for Michigan on offense, I have to say, for me, this was a very disappointing performance. How much are they paying Bryce Underwood?
Yeah,
Like,
more than
I
some
know,
rookies.
yeah. So I know he's a freshman, but Michigan just seems very, very one dimensional, and the Ohio State defense just continued to shut that down all game.
Yeah, the little score bug at the bottom, second half, he had less than 10 passes or something. I was just like,
Hmm.
well, I don't know what the game plan was here.
Yeah, I don't know either. Nonetheless, the better team won the game, and Ohio State, they finally get the bragging rights they want. To me, this felt bigger and more personal than a national championship for them. And honestly, I think that's the beauty of rivalry week. No matter how great you really are, your rivals know you better than you do sometimes. And, they can shake up everything you plan to do or plan to accomplish before the regular season ends. So shout out to Ohio State for getting the win here. And they move on to a conference title game against number 2 Indiana.
Yeah. Nice, nice, nice.
Um,
Yeah, so we'll move on. LSU at number 8, Oklahoma. Oklahoma gets the win, 17-13.
mhm.
We said on our preview show that this would be a very, low scoring, very defensive game. In a game like this that featured two of some of the worst rushing teams in CFB, this game actually started with back-to-back interceptions by both teams. You kind of got an idea of where this game was headed, after that. The second quarter, this was a snoozer. I mean, it had 7 drives by both teams. 5 of them ended with punts, with a total of 78 yards. So the first half really just was it must have been a defensive masterclass because there was little to no offense whatsoever by both teams. LSU had 66 yards, Oklahoma had 155. Even though the second half had 2 more interceptions by John Mateer, he quietly racked up a little over 300 yards for the game. So I don't know there's not much else to say about this one. They seem to have secured a spot in the CFP, Oklahoma did, with this win, but their rushing ability, lack of it, I mean, it's a concern for me going into the postseason. I know they went up against a very good defense in LSU, but 75 yards on the ground is not going to cut it. Second leading rusher was John Mateer. Um, Especially considering how erratic John Mateer can be with the ball. He's got games like this where he throws more picks than touchdowns. It's just a concern for me moving forward for Oklahoma.
Mhm. No, that's fair. That's fair. Um, yeah, nonetheless, they got the win. Moving on, number 14, Vandy. They came to Rocky Top, Tennessee, and they dominated Tennessee 45-24. Listen, I don't care what happens. This committee, in my opinion, they need to find a way to get Vandy into the playoffs. Um, they found a way to secure a tough victory on the road in an overpowering fashion. It didn't start that way, however. Tennessee was doing everything they could to rattle Heisman candidate Diego Pavia, and it was effective. I mean, he ended up with 2 interceptions in the first half, and at one point, this team was down 20-14. We saw, Joey Aguilar feeling comfortable and hitting his favorite target, Chris Brazel, downfield or drawing, pass interference at will.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it also seemed like, this game is going to get out of hand in the other direction um, with all of that going on. But, Clark Lee, he did a really, really good job of letting his team know, not to get too emotional in the rivalry hype. He made sure to let his team know that there are bigger things at stake past this game. Um, and it works. This team came out in the second half and they absolutely dominated. Their defense, they made adjustments and they didn't give up a single touchdown in the second half. I credit that defensive line. That they were aggressive, stingy, and they got to Joey Aguilar 4 times for sacks. On the offensive side of the ball, Pavia, he continued to do his Heisman-like plays, and he ended up with 268 passing yards and 165 rushing yards. This is my plug to send him to New York for the Heisman Trophy race, by the way. What quarterback do you know is passing and running the ball more effectively than him? Let us know in the comments. But right now, in my eyes, I don't see one. My plug for why Vandy should be in the playoffs is about, more, is about to make more sense in a second. So don't let the media have you fooled. Pavia, he has a lot of supporting cast members that make this offense complete. At running back, you have, Cedric Alexander. He's rushed for 115 yards yesterday. He's a stout, angry runner, and in my opinion, he's going to be playing on Sundays. The guy was jumping over folks, making elite cuts back, to the other side of the field for touchdowns, and he had 3 scores on the ground. I bet there's plenty of other SEC teams that wish they had him in the backfield right now, to be honest. Maybe even Alabama. um, Pavia, his receiving core, they've been great this year too. Eli Stowers, he's known for being Pavia's favorite target, tends to be reliable on the deep ball, and sometimes, he's clutch being, the one who makes the congested catch in the middle of the field. He's been my favorite tight end to watch this year, to be honest. He's been electric. Someone who's recently caught my eye though, uh, Trey Richardson. He embodies that slot receiver play style like a Tyreek Hill or Percy Harvin back in the day, right? Just get this guy the ball in space and he can work. He had 75 receiving yards and a touchdown yesterday, but before then, he had a huge week against Kentucky. I think he had over 100 receiving yards and 3 touchdowns against them. Um, Look, I honestly don't know where this Vandy team will fall because, we have a lot of 10-win teams near the top 12 this year. And then currently, I think Texas has them beat in the head-to-head matchup. I would just hate for a team this exciting to miss the playoffs because, they have the potential to beat and compete with anybody, right? But I
Yeah.
mean, fact of the matter is that's just the way life is sometimes. You have to take care of business in the regular season if you want to compete for a national title.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's only so many spots. Maybe we'll take a look at the bracket and what we think
Mhm.
post Tuesday. But Aaron, I was on ESPN's website. I'm waiting to see some Lane Kiffin information, but I got some other breaking news. So Auburn has actually hired the head coach from USF, Alex Golish. So he's been announced as the next head coach for Auburn. So I guess either DJ Durkin wasn't him or he just really wanted to remain on the defensive side. But
Mhm.
the idea here is that Alex Golish, he's going to get started on that class of 2026, class commitments, portal, all that stuff. But he's going to be in town today to get started working. So just wanted to
Wow.
put that out there while we were. This literally happened 5 minutes ago while we were recording.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's take a quick preview. We're not going to do a deep dive or anything like that into conference championships. That's going to come up this Saturday.
Mhm.
Obviously, the SEC championship is going to be in Atlanta. I will be in Florida running my marathon, so I won't be in town. But
Mhm.
after I get done with that, hopefully my legs are still intact. I'll find some sports bar or something to watch this at. But obviously, we've got UGA at Alabama or sorry, UJ versus Alabama in Atlanta. In a season that showed so much promise for a variety of teams, Aaron, you mentioned it. That's what you were thankful for, right? Like the SEC had so many teams that could have made it. Teams we
Mhm.
never see in the spotlight, Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, as some examples. We saw teams that might have finally got to Atlanta for the first time since they've joined. Oklahoma and Texas A&M come to mind. Instead, we end up with Alabama and Georgia for the third time in like 5 years. So this is a rematch, obviously. Alabama beat Georgia in Athens the first time they played. Any early thoughts on this one?
Yeah, these are definitely different teams than when the first time they played, right? Georgia, they're much more developed and matured and better on both sides of the ball. Gunnar Stockton, he plays a lot more confidently. And then for Alabama, I think they've leaned in on the fact that they have trouble running the ball and they're all in on Ty Simpson being a surgeon through the air and picking defenses apart. So could see a very different game than what we saw earlier this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moving on to the Big Ten championship, you got best on best Ohio State versus number 2 Indiana. Um, Number 1 versus number 2. So don't know if we have, if we would have seen this game, outside the NIL transfer portal error, but we're here. We finally get to see, Ohio State play a team with a pulse, Michigan last week. Now we get to see them do it again against, Indiana. Indiana, they probably have one of the best resumes in college football this year. They definitely have earned the right to be here. Very excited to see how, Fernando Mendoza, how he holds up against this strong Ohio State defense. Fun facts, Indiana has not won an outright Big Ten title since 1945, and they haven't beaten Ohio State since 1988. But you know what Kurt Signetti would say to that? This team hasn't played in a Big Ten game or played Ohio State.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Um,
very true. Cool. Well, excited for that one for sure. Number one versus number two. I'm sure Big Ten fans are foaming at the mouth.
Mhm.
Big 12 championship. This game will be played in Dallas. Texas Tech versus BYU. This is another rematch. So, Aaron, our dark horses made it to the big stage, at least for the
Mhm.
for the Big 12 perspective, championship perspective. I mean, TTU versus BYU in a rematch
Mhm.
for the Big 12 championship in Dallas. Do you see anything different? Do you see anything going differently this time around?
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be hard to beat this team twice. But that first win was just so convincing.
Yeah.
Still, both teams they've been impressive since that game in early November. Uh, plus, Baron Morton, he's healing from his leg injury. They obviously still don't have Will Hammond to fall back on if he gets hurt. So it's gonna be an interesting one. Again, it's so hard to beat a team twice.
Yeah.
hmm
What
Moving
about the
on to
championships?
the
Yeah.
ACC championship. Duke, they were able to slip into the ACC championship after SMU loses their game last night. If 7-5 Duke, if they win this game, does the committee put them into the postseason? It seems absurd just because you won a weak conference, but it could happen.
I saw something about Duke. They have a losing record against teams that have a winning record. So this is they got to put that into account. If Duke wins this game, I don't think ACC gets a team into the CFP. Maybe that's how
Mm,
Vanderbilt gets in.
maybe.
But you know who is guaranteed a spot in the CFP? The
hmm
American Conference champion. So we've got UNT, University of North Texas versus Tulane. This is the G5 winner. They get to go to the CFP. Although I guess James Madison could somehow jump if like both of these teams look trash. I don't know. I don't know how that stuff works anymore. UNT actually, I found this out over the weekend. Me and my friend Steven, we were at the game. He was arguing that Georgia Tech had the number one offense. I said no, they don't. So I had to look it up, and it was actually North Texas. So they have the number one offense in total yards in CFB, obviously against the level of competition they play, but that's what they have, and that's what Tulane will have to deal with. So the winner of this one most likely gets to play whoever number 5 seed is after the conference championship weekend. So, in any case, that's a very high level preview. We'll provide a deeper dive into the conference championship weekend later this week. But yeah, that's it for this episode. We really appreciate you guys watching. I know it's a little long, but appreciate you guys watching, and we'll be back on Thursday.